Okay, good morning. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to be looking at hiring, and for those of you who haven't been on one of these strategy slice calls before, basically the way it works is that of the programs that we have here at Phimation, one of them is the Strategic Leader Program, which is a training and coaching program for CEOs and VP executives. And so each month we cover a different topic. This and whatever topic we're covering, we do a little slice of that for folks that aren't in the program in this call. So this Friday, that's tomorrow, we're going to be doing hiring, and I'll be showing you some of the thoughts that we're going to be covering. Again, just a small slice from it. This is also a reminder, if you are in the Strategic Leader Program, we had a few missed dates and things like that on the notices this month, so we will be duplicating, this is just a duplication of what you will get tomorrow, and if you signed up for this one thinking that it was going to be additive or different, you may want to join just to see what a marketing content example looks like. But besides that, if you're mostly interested in the hiring part of it, then I would recommend that you take this half hour that you would assign today and just participate tomorrow. But you're welcome to join us. I see that there are a few folks from the Strategic Leader Program on the call. So stay with us if you want, but also we'll be covering everything tomorrow if that's easier. All right, we'll cover a little bit about my background, a little bit about why strategy is important and why it can be hard. And then I did not update this slide from last month. So we have been talking about hiring. I'm talking about marketing. We're going to be talking about hiring this month. And then there's a how to learn more, which is basically participating in that Strategic Leader Program. For those of you that aren't familiar with Phimation, Phi is the ratio of spirals, and it's obviously a very powerful way that the universe can help growth to happen. So Phimation is the universe's natural process of growth that enables both function and expansion. You think about how a spiral works, and it functions currently with what it needs to do, but it also enables an expansion and growth. And so that's a very useful and nice analogy for the process that our clients go through and the process that we help them with. My background is, and you'll get these slides so you can look in more detail if you want, but my background is I'm usually kind of at the COO or board level. I do coaching with manager level. I also work with the leadership team and the vice presidents, but a lot of my work is at the COO and board of directors level. Needs to balance both being strategically aware and going in the right direction, but also executing on a day-to-day basis. And I'm at about 20 active clients now, so they're all over the map as far as industries. So I get to see a lot of different situations. Smallest one is about 6 employees, largest one is about 200 employees. So let's talk first about two major ideas on why strategy is important and why it's challenging. The first one is, what is strategy? Strategy is fundamentally about choosing, and of course at the heart of choosing is decisions. And if you unpack decisions, they're made up of two components. Options for the choices that you have in front of you for the decision to be made, and then the evaluation criteria, or how you're going to make that decision. And what's interesting about what's happening in the world today is that all three of these variables in the, I'll call it the strategy formula, all three of these variables are becoming more intense, are growing more complicated and more significant. In the decisions part, there's disruption in industries that didn't have change very fast or weren't changing very much. There's now change, and so there's simply more decisions that need to be made, and most of my clients are facing more decisions than they have in the past. In addition to that, with abundance of from 3 channels on TV to 500 channels on TV to 1 million channels on YouTube, there's just an abundance of options and choices in a way that there wasn't previously in society. So even as we're making more decisions, we're faced with more options. And then the last piece of this is there's more uncertainty So as we're looking at the criteria to evaluate the options, we have to consider more things. If you know what your revenue is pretty consistently over the next year or two, you can use that as a frame of reference for making a decision about making an investment. On the other hand, if you don't know if you're going to make money or lose money, well, now we have to change that criteria, because it's like, well, am I investing for the short term or am I investing for the long term? So because of the uncertainty, you have to be more conscious of what the criteria are, and you're faced with more, having basically to look at more criteria than you used to in the past. So that's happening in the environment around us. And then the question as leaders of our companies is, how do we manage that? And I think there's a kind of a broad framework that's useful in understanding that. Those of you that know me know that I like working on these matrices. And so this is a very fundamental one as we think about making decisions as leaders and managing strategy. On the y-axis, up and down, is familiarity of the situation and of the decision. If it's highly familiar, then it was on the low side, so we've made a lot of those choices or seen that situation a lot before. If it's unfamiliar, then that's would be scoring up on high on the y-axis. And then how complex is the situation? How complex is the decision that you have to make? Again, if it's very simple, it's on the left. If it's highly complex, it's on the right. So this framework provides a guide to think about how we have to manage strategy. And the kinds of things that you see showing up in unfamiliar, highly complex decisions are when transitions are happening, accelerations, the market is changing, and then really anything internally that's new markets, new functions, new approaches. So all that new stuff is where complexity really shows up. Let me clear my throat here. And the other piece of this is that's also where growth. I was just talking to a CEO of an $80 million company yesterday, and when you're growing, decisions, even if it's the same decision at its core, it becomes more complicated just because there are more interdependencies as you grow than there were before. So even you could be hiring someone when you had 12 people and then hiring somebody when you had 50 people, and you would have to go through a bit of a different process when you have 50 people, because there's more interdependencies, more complexity even of that position, even though in theory the position hasn't changed. So that's when, well, and what's happened with society, let's see if it's going to let me click down here. So going back to our chart here of more decisions, more options, more criteria, we've even expanded what this chart looks like. So the new area that we have to deal with, there's just more. The old and familiar is still the same, but there's a lot more that we're dealing with that's in the unfamiliar and the complicated, and the unfamiliar and complicated. So how do we deal with that? You change your decision making, change your strategy approach as you're dealing with the different environments. If you're in a highly familiar, simple decision environment, then your intuition works really well for that. And the best thing is to make quick decisions and adjust as you go. You're probably going to get it 85% right, and the last 15% you can manage as you've always managed it. The area of unfamiliar and highly complicated, though, that's where you have to have a more structured approach to it. And the part of your business, or the areas when you will waste the most money by making poor decisions, are when you are actually in the upper right-hand corner here and dealing with a complicated situation, and you think that you're in an uncomplicated, highly familiar area. In other words, you're not fully understanding the risks that are involved. And so if you look at your history, if I look at my history as a business person, the places where I have spent the most money, in a sense wasted the most money or learned the hardest lessons, has been when I thought that something was simpler than it was. And so the tools that we have in the strategy slice, in the strategic leader program, and those programs are designed to provide some framework to have a more structured process for making those decisions. with that, we'll look at hiring. So as we apply that general concept of trying to understand when is it more complicated, when is it simpler, and how do we adjust our hiring approach to represent that. The first concept that I want to present, we have been looking at marketing over the last couple of months in the Strategic Leader Program, and really hiring, recruiting is very similar to the function that you have with your marketing and sales. It's just that you're selling your employees, you're selling your staff, or selling people to come in to your company, as opposed to selling customers. But really, kind of at a general, in a general philosophical way, the hiring process is similar to marketing and sales. It's just that you have a different sale and a different target market. But let's look at hiring itself. So there are different hiring situations. On the y-axis here, I put the importance of the role, low importance to high importance, bottom to top. And then on the x-axis, I put the availability of talent. So abundant talent means I can go out and, you know, it's pretty easy for me to find it. Scarce on the right-hand side is it would be hard to replace or harder to replace. And so let's look at what some examples of that are. If we go, I'll start at the bottom. If you're thinking of a role that is not that important in the overall scheme of the business and relatively, talent is relatively available, I think of that as like a general administrative role. That would fall there. You move to the right and get more scarce, still in that administrative role. In the overall scheme of things, it's less important. But as you get into specialized administration, so I have one client that has billing clerks, and they have kind of a specialized knowledge about how to handle that billing process. You also see that in kind of network administrators or IT. You might see that in managing a marketing system. So still in the overall, of course, every role is important, but in the overall scheme of kind of the scope of what somebody could impact, the administration level is going to make it on the lower importance, and then the availability is going to be tied to how specialized it is. High important role, but relatively available, I think of like a customer service rep. I mean, those folks are really important for the interacting with the customer, but they're also reasonably available. In the big scheme of things, again, where you get to high importance of role, high availability, scarce availability is the vice president of product development, vice president of some kind of specialized function that you have in your company. So with these different situations in mind, then we can look at different hiring strategies. And I'll start at the lower left here. If we're dealing with a role that's less important and talent is reasonably available, it's mostly about being efficient. It's kind of like advertise, make it known, and then select, because they are so available. You know, it's not going to be that hard to go out and find candidates. This is where friends and family can be really useful, because again, you're just looking for efficiency. So what's the closest way to find people that are available? And then I sometimes refer to second stage hiring processes as hope and luck, and that means like you go out to lunch with somebody and you say, oh, I really like that person, and then you say, you know, actually I got a position that's available, maybe you'd be good for it. That's mostly a hope and luck strategy, because you really don't know whether that person's a good fit or not. And we can go through a hiring process that can make you more certain, but if you're not doing that, then you're kind of leaving it up to hope and luck. Then let's go up and to the left and right. I mean, up and to the right here, and look at the play the odds approach. In that one, you're doing a more elaborate process. As a matter of fact, I guess I should skip all the way to the upper right. So lower left is efficiency. Upper right is you're really playing to win. This is an important role, and it's a scarce availability of talent. You have to devote the adequate, significant resources to get that right. The impact of not getting it right can be significant on the company, and so you want to make sure that you're playing to win. An example of that would be that at the end of a process where I'm doing a play to win hire, I want to have 3 different candidates process that I feel all of them would be viable options, because I don't want to get to the end and have one candidate and then have that candidate blow up and then be left with nothing from my whole process. In order to end up with 3 viable candidates, I'm going to have probably 3 times the pool, the beginning candidate pool at the start to end up with that. So play to win means you are, in a sense, over-resourcing this whole initiative, but you're doing that because the cost of getting it wrong is so high. So in play to win, you really need to be proactively seeking these candidates. It's less of a kind of, we're going to let people know and then they're going to apply, and more go after people. That doesn't mean individually go after, but it means that you're going to have to be more actively kind of marketing and selling the position. You need to have a discipline about the process, and it simply is more extensive. As opposed to 2 interviews, you might do 3 or even 4 interviews just to make sure that you're getting it right. The upper left and lower right corners of this, the ones that were the customer service rep and the specialized administrator, that's where I think you can kind of, what I'll say, play the odds. So you're using a lot of the framework and structure of a play to win process that's very kind of elaborate and structured, but you're cutting corners with that. And at the end of a play the odds hire, I don't mind being left with 1 candidate or maybe 2, because what I'm looking for there is, can I get it close enough? Can I get it so I think they're probably going to be okay? I don't need to really have an assured feeling about that hire before I make it. Why don't I need it in those situations? Because in the upper left-hand corner, the role is important, but the availability of talent is good. And so if I got it wrong, I can go hire another person and try to get it right again. Now, if I repeatedly hire that position wrong, then it may be that I need to change that process and I actually need to do more of a play to win, because I need to do some learning about what I'm hiring wrong in that position. But overall, the reason that you can cut the corners there is because if you get it wrong, you'll be able to find another replacement relatively easily. On the play the odds on the lower right-hand side, you're still dealing with scarce talent, but it's really not that important. So if you end up with a B- C+ player, not great, but it's not going to be an immediate, real problem on the business, as opposed to other areas where you might be able to focus your resources. So that's why I think play the odds is okay with both of those. One other, got to clear my throat again here. One other concept that I want to make sure that you're aware of in looking at this chart is is that sometimes you may think that you're dealing with the left-hand side of this chart, that the talent is reasonably available, but you may be doing things that make you actually be dealing with the right-hand side of the chart. So in this one here, be careful what you wish for. Let's look at the left-hand side only. I'll kind of talk you through all this stuff that's going on. So at the top here, we have the scope. Let me get a highlighter. At the top here, we have the scope and the characteristics of the role. All right, that's like defining the job position. And let's say you start by saying, I need somebody that can handle operations. And then you say, well, and I also need somebody that can do sales. And I also need somebody that can do operations and sales, but they also need to know how to do marketing. And I need them to think strategically. I also need to, even though they're thinking strategically, I also need them to roll up their sleeves and help sometimes. And I want somebody that's going to be empathetic, because we have a family environment. And so it can't just take anybody. As you expand that role by adding each of those scopes and characteristics, the thing you have to, and that's that arrow going outward here, you have to be aware that up in the availability of talent, you are working your way in from a big circle, lots of talent. So if you're just looking for somebody that can handle operations and you haven't predefined all of your characteristics or other scope that they need to handle, then you have a really big pool that you can select from, because you're going to find some in that pool can also do sales. Some in that pool can't also do sales. So So you're dealing with the biggest pool. Every time you add a dimension of scope or characteristic, you're making the availability of talent smaller and smaller. And so you may start with, let me switch here. You may start with something that is over on the left-hand side here of, yeah, there are lots of people that can handle operations, but as you layer in those other things, you're moving over to the right. As you move over to the right, you're getting into the zone here of got to be more proactively seeking, have to be more disciplined and more extensive in what I'm doing. All right, so in the Strategic Leader Program, let me copy this. In the Strategic Leader Program tomorrow, we're also going to be talking, so this just sets up, all right, you should be doing different things for different hires. The question, of course, is then, well, what should I be doing? That's the kind of stuff that we're going to be looking at in the Strategic Leader Program tomorrow. What's the multi-step process for doing interviews? What should a first interview look like? What should a second interview look like? The one thing that I'll tell you for those of you that have joined today is that in a sense, we're trying to replicate the marketing and sales process. Not really, it's just similar, but if you want a general guide to the kinds of activities that we're going to build out and talk about in the hiring process, it's a similar funnel that we're working with. All right, so that's what we're going to have coming up tomorrow. Let me talk, if you're not in the Strategic Leader Program and you're interested in participating tomorrow or just interested about this, let me tell you about this $100 starter kit that I have. It has a Stage 2 Owner's Manual, which is like a practical kind of field guide for leading your company. It's got 12 different topics. I also have a strategy toolkit that has a number of those matrix kind of decision tools, as well as a blog worksheet, a performance review template. It's got kind of some practical stuff and some strategic thinking tools to help you. Then we have the Strategic Leader Program. Every month I do about a half hour of information training about how to think about a topic, and then we also have open Q&A and additional discussion that sometimes is Q&A, sometimes is actually getting in and coaching on a particular somebody's situation that either you could be the person getting coached, or you could listen in and hear what the situation that they're dealing with is and learn from it. Some stuff that we've covered in the past in that: sales process, performance review, dashboards, mission and vision, a weekly management meeting. So we get into really broad stuff and also some more specific things, but all around how can we be better leaders for our company. There's also a really cool program called the Rising Leader Program that's for the next level below the leadership team, the executives. So it's for rising middle managers. And with that, it's more like 15 to 20 minutes of content and then open Q&A for the middle managers. So the topics we've covered: managing your boss, which was a really fun one, making an investment request. We just did performance reviews, and this month we are going to be talking about building great teams. So the Strategic Leader Program is tomorrow, the Rising Leader Program is next week, and we'll be talking about building great teams for that. With the starter kit, it's both like a 3-month trial, so you can see whether you like it or not, and then if you do, then you can sign up. It's a monthly subscription, and it's very reasonable. So if you want to do both, if you Strategic Leader and Rising Leader for as many people as you want in your company, it's $120 a month. And there's more details below that as far as if you don't want everybody to participate and things like that. But even if you did for the whole team, it's very reasonable. So, and if you're interested in participating tomorrow and or getting the starter kit, Allison on the team here can help you. It's 2 L's, Allison@Phimation.com, or again, you see her phone number up there, and you can reach out and contact her. So I appreciate you joining today. Next month, we put it up for a vote every month to see what strategic leader folks want to cover. Innovation, I think, is a strong possibility for next month. What a good vision looks like is a possibility for next month. And then managing a weekly meeting with your team is also a possibility. I'm not sure which one is going to get the votes, but you'll know by looking at what we cover next month. So thanks for joining me today. Would love to talk about it more if you have any interest in joining tomorrow. And you should, I'm pretty sure you'll get a, you'll see the recording of this if you're interested in it on the next monthly email that I send out, the newsletter one off on the right-hand side. And I think that's it. So thanks again. I hope you have a good month, and I hope that if you're doing any hiring, you keep in mind that your approach should just match to the role that you're dealing with. All right. Have a good month. Hopefully we'll talk to you next month. Thanks. Bye.